Hello and welcome to another edition of Court Reports. I'm Hans Fogle along with Don Aines. A strange case out of West Virginia in that it's about a year old, but there's been new evidence uncovered.
Yes, and we're not exactly sure what evidence the West Virginia State Police may be talking about, but it had to do with the death of 56-year-old David Hutzel last January 2012 and his son, 9-year-old James Hutzler. It was originally thought to be a murder-suicide. They were found in their Glengarry, West Virginia home. It was a mobile home, partially burned, their bodies both badly burned in it. The autopsies originally indicated that the father and son died from gunshot wounds to the head, and the boy had a second glancing gunshot wound on his chin. Now the West Virginia State Police, without exactly saying what the evidence is, they're now looking at it as a high probability that it was a murder-suicide.
A double homicide at this point.
A double homicide, I'm sorry. The circumstances are suspicious in nature and the investigation is ongoing. Police said earlier this week anyone with information can contact Trooper C.S. Maynard at 304-267-0002. So we'll see what develops with this in the next coming weeks if they're come up with more information to divulge to the public.
Yeah, that will be certainly an interesting one to follow.
So this a murder-suicide this week in Pennsylvania involves some people well known in the fire and police community. 50-year-old John Fogle, who had been fire chief of Blue Ridge Summit, and he supposedly shot and killed his wife Kathy, and then himself with a handgun. Also shot in the arm in the incident was Flagle's stepson, Mitchell Robinson. Now, this happened at their Marpenn Avenue home in Washington Township. That's near the Maryland state line. It's in Washington Township. State police took over the case because Kathy Fogle worked for the Washington Township Police Department. And
Mr. Fogle, I think, had a history with them, had worked part-time for a
yes,
period
he'd been,
full-time.
I believe, both a township police officer and a Waynesboro police officer at various times, and also had a part-time business. I don't know if anything more will be forthcoming on that or whether they'll close it as a murder-suicide.
Certainly a very strikes at the core of the community with their involvement, obviously, so certainly thinking of the folks there.
Yes, and I'm sure I certainly talked to her on the phone before, and probably him when I'm sure I did talk to him when he was at Blue Ridge, just in the course of reporting on fires and police matters. And we also had this week in Washington County Circuit Court a man who had been involved in an incident with police at his home in which a shot was fired, kind of a standoff case. He drew a rather lengthy prison sentence this week, and I think Dan Dirth, I was off that day, so Dan Dirth, reporter, covered it for us.
Yeah, Dan has this report from this past week on the incident.
A Hagerstown man who admitted he was trying to commit suicide by having police kill him during a standoff last May has been sentenced to serve 17 years in prison. 50-year-old Sean Lapine was sentenced Wednesday in Washington County Circuit Court. Police went to Lapine's home in the Cortland Manor housing development on May 18th after an acquaintance reported he was making suicidal threats. Police called the Washington County Special Response Team after Lapine refused to answer the door. At one point during the standoff, an officer fired a foam pellet at Lapine's chest when he walked outside. Police said Lapine was able to retreat inside the house and fired a shot that officers said went through a glass window on the front door. Lapine eventually surrendered to police. For the Herald-Mail and HMTV6, this is Dan Dirth.
And so there you see 17 years for that incident. And suicide by cop, a term I hadn't heard until maybe about a year or so ago, but it's
fairly, not really uncommon. There's another case coming up next week in which the man was actually shot 3 or 4 times by the police in a standoff. And I don't know whether that will be a plea or a trial, but that's coming up Monday. Gentleman's name is Jardina. I can't remember his first name, unfortunately.
And there was an incident not long ago in Martinsburg, I believe, that appeared to be something similar. But as you say, they're not necessarily uncommon. Also a situation this week involving the discovery of a meth lab on the Sharpsburg Pike. I believe Dan had a story on that as well.
Yes.
2 people have been charged with trying to make methamphetamines at the home they shared on Sharpsburg Pike just south of Hagerstown. 32-year-old Lauren Starkey and 30-year-old Heather Nave were charged with several counts of attempting to manufacture a controlled dangerous substance. On Friday, the Washington County Narcotics Task Force served a warrant at the home that Starkey and Nave shared at 10433 Sharpsburg Pike. Police said the search turned up equipment used for making methamphetamines. If convicted, Starkey and Nave face a maximum sentence of 14 years in prison. For the Herald-Mail and HMTV6, this is Dan Dirth.
Now, you're no stranger to meth labs yourself, not in the way you might be thinking at home, but you...
As part of a story, I took a course on meth lab recognition, the kind of things you look for that you would find associated with meth users and people that have meth labs. Things like they have a lot of propane tanks, the kind you use for backyard barbecues, pornography, lots of cigarettes, description of symptoms they called like meth mouth. Apparently not good for your dental hygiene, but it was a very interesting, and the chemicals they work with is in that system, in that story Dan did. They're working with lighter fluid, lye, lithium, salt, a number of chemicals that each of them by themselves could be rather dangerous to work with.
Between that, the propane and the cigarettes, it's certainly not a safe environment,
No.
to say the least. Really quickly, we've got not much time left, but I understand there was a case on Thursday that had a late verdict delivered.
Yes, I just got back from that. Eric Shaquille Bayman, he's a 19-year-old. He was found guilty of first-degree assault and use of a handgun in a crime of violence. This, the jury found that he had tried to rip off a drug dealer at gunpoint. The drug dealer got the gun from Mr. Bayman, and so Mr. Bayman, who had troubles with the law in an attempted holdup of a convenience store 2 years ago, is now looking at a long time in prison.
And we'll have more on these stories at herald-mail.com. Don, pleasure as always.
Thank you, Hans.
Thanks for joining us on Court Reports.